Hey y'all, my name is Cassie and I am the creator of Pieces of Scrap, and in today's video we're gonna be doing a kind of like crochet with me while I story time because if you didn't know, I missed last week's upload, and that's because I had appendicitis and I was recovering from surgery. So I thought that I'd just do a little story time kind of recapping how that all went for me. What I'm working on today is I am working on a commission for one of my friends. She wants a granny square bag, so these are the squares that I have so far, and I've got 4 left over. I'm working on 1 now. And so the squares are yellow, purple, green, and then the outside is like a cream color. So I'm gonna try to finish those up today and get them blocked later today. But I figured it's a good time, since this is something I don't really have to look at a pattern to do, to give you guys a story time about what happened to me. So let's go ahead and jump into it. I will say that I'm gonna talk about things like bowel movements and vomiting and stuff like that, and if that's not your thing, I would recommend you probably not watch this video, or at least be prepared. Like, don't be eating. That would be not very wise of you. Anyway, so Thursday night, I was off work, like I had just gotten off work, and I was getting ready to get ready to make dinner for my husband and I, and do a little gardening, when I had a very sudden urge. Like, I had a stomach ache, I had a pretty big urge to go to the bathroom to go poop, and I did. And then when I finished, I went upstairs because to tell my husband that my stomach ache still hadn't gone away, and that I also had back pain, so I wanted him to pop my back for me. So he went ahead and did that, and the pain didn't go away. I was hoping that the stomach pain was related to the back pain, because sometimes those are just kind of related, if you get what I mean. Like, sometimes if you have stomach pain, that makes you feel like you have back pain, and vice versa. So I was hoping that the stomach pain was just residual from needing my back popped. So anyway, my husband popped my back. I was still feeling pain, and the way that he popped my back is I laid face down on the floor, and he kind of like pushed up into my upper back, and that popped it really well. But that also caused some additional pain in my stomach. Like, it made it feel worse for a little bit. And 3 hours after that, I was doing my best to work through the pain. It wasn't getting any better. It wasn't getting necessarily any worse. It was like just staying at the same level of pain, and it didn't matter what I did. I would walk around, like pace, stand still, lay down flat on my back, lay on my side, curl up into a ball, anything. None of it was making me feel better, which was really strange. So after 3 hours had passed of me trying to deal with that pain, it was about 8:30, 8 o'clock, and we decided that I needed to see a doctor, so we went to the emergency room. We were really lucky because the emergency room wasn't super busy. There were like 2 people ahead of us, so we had to wait for them. While I was in the emergency room waiting to be seen, I kept going back and forth from the waiting room and the bathroom, and I pooped several times while we were there. And then each time, like before I had to go to the bathroom, I would feel like chills. I was freezing cold. I live in East Texas, and it was in the 90s last night, and I came to the hospital in sweatpants and a sweatshirt and a t-shirt underneath. So I was like bundled up and freezing cold, which was not, that's not normal for me. I would get the chills and I was really cold after and before going to the bathroom. And then all of a sudden I felt really, really hot, and my husband left. He was gonna go to the store really quick to get me a water bottle and some Pepto-Bismol because we thought that would help. We weren't thinking at this point that it was appendicitis. I know that I kind of was. I was afraid of that because on my mom's side of the family, I think everybody except one of her siblings has gotten appendicitis and had to get an appendectomy. And she is one of 9 siblings. I had a feeling that that was what was happening, but I wasn't 100% sure. I thought maybe like it was a gastrointestinal infection, or, you know, maybe it was something else. So I get really hot after, this would have been the 5th time that I pooped in 3 hours. And I felt really hot, and then I felt really nauseous, and I ran to the bathroom and I vomited up my lunch. I hadn't eaten dinner because around 5 o'clock when it started, I was experiencing these pains, and every smell of food made me nauseous. My husband, around 8 o'clock, made 2 bagels and like fried up an egg to put on those bagels. Just in case that I got hungry, like I started to get over the pain or anything like that, and he could feed me. But I never got over the pain, and I couldn't even be in the same room as him when he was eating the egg bagels, because the smell of the egg was just, I couldn't be in the same room. It was making me feel nauseous. Anyway, the only time I vomited was after I had that hot flash at the hospital. My husband had gone to the store to get me Pepto-Bismol. After I vomited, I was able to sit down in the waiting room for the first time. Not that there wasn't seats available, it was just that before that point, sitting was too uncomfortable, but after I vomited, I was able to sit down, and kind of, the pain was, the uncomfortability of sitting down was like more bearable at that point. And at that point, I was pretty sure I was completely empty. Like there was nothing left that I could poop out. There was nothing left that I could puke out because I had only eaten lunch that day. And I was like, okay, the pain is still there and there's no more like uncomfortability. It was just pain. So I knew at that point that it probably wasn't anything to do with my intestines, or I guess appendix is attached to your intestines. That's the whole nature of appendicitis, is that little tiny like pinky sized organ at the end of your intestines becomes inflamed and swollen. So I guess it had to do with my intestines, but like not in that nature is what I'm trying to say. It didn't have anything to do with like bowel movements or something like that, is what I gathered from pain still being there, but having nothing left to expel. So anyway, my husband returned from the store. I had some Pepto-Bismol, and then I washed it down with water. I was still really hot at this point, but I was going in between hot and really cold like so quickly that it was really concerning. We were still waiting a little while to get into an exam room to see a doctor. But after my husband got back, I think we waited maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and then I was finally able to see the doctor. So they took me into an initial room where they take your weight, height, your vitals, stuff like that, and then they write down your symptoms and take them to a doctor before escorting you to an exam room. I told her all my symptoms, I told her what I suspected it might be, and then she took me to an exam room. They collected urine from me, which was really difficult for me because every time that I had gone to the bathroom that night, I had also peed. So there wasn't like much left in me, and I think I got like a couple drops into this cup that she gave me, and she thought that might be enough, but then later they had to get more from me. But they did like 3 or 4 tests from the tiny bit of urine sample that I was able to give them. And they also took some blood from me. It was really uncomfortable. They put in an IV into my arm right here where it bends, which was really uncomfortable for me. When my nurse finally came in to see me, he did a test where you lay down flat on your back and he takes your right foot, you flex your foot so that it's like this instead of like pointed, and hit the bottom of my foot. And at that point I wasn't feeling a lot of pain. It didn't really feel like anything when he did that. It was just like, okay. But he said that if you have appendicitis, that's something that would feel really uncomfortable. It would feel really painful. Appendicitis symptoms are normally, if you have appendicitis, you will feel a really sharp pain on the right side of your stomach, like all the time. I wasn't feeling a sharp pain, but it was really, really painful. It was really uncomfortable. The pain was pretty dull. At that point, when I went into the emergency room, I rated my pain at like a 6 or a 7 out of 10. So it wasn't super painful for me, but it was definitely something that I didn't want to continue experiencing. It was something that I had been experiencing for about 4 hours at that point, and I wanted to figure out what was going on. So my nurse told me might not be appendicitis. It usually presents pretty early, and I would be feeling a lot more pain. So he put an IV in, took some blood from me, and then went on to do his tests. And then a little bit later, there was another nurse that came in, and she took me to do a CT scan. And they ran some iodine through my body so that they could see, I'm not completely sure how that works, but it was like they put iodine in my body so that they can tell where things are blocked, or maybe where things are swollen or something like that. It was probably more along the lines of blockage. That was the first time I had ever done it, and it was just a really weird experience. You lay down flat on your back on a plate that like moves you into this like little tube it has a hole only big enough for your body, so you have your arms like tucked underneath your body while you're in it so that it doesn't like bump them while it moves you. They do an initial scan without the iodine, and then they put you through with the iodine. And the iodine that they put into me, the nurse said this was completely normal, but it makes you feel really warm really fast. Like it shoots through your IV, through your bloodstream. And so I felt warm in places that I didn't know could feel warm, which was really strange, like immediately. And then it was gone. So it was just really weird. The CT scan, when she was explaining it to me before, like she actually had me lay down on the plate and get prepared for it or whatever, I had been so cold and so nervous that I was just like shaking uncontrollably. And part of me was like, that's probably because I am freezing cold, but I wouldn't be surprised that it was also because I was just scared. I knew that a CT scan wasn't gonna hurt me or anything like that, but I was just like so nervous about the whole entire situation. This had been the first time I had been hospitalized for myself. I had been to the hospital when my mom was in the hospital in November. She passed away from liver cirrhosis of the liver, and I have also been I've stayed overnight in the hospital when my brother had kidney failure and he had a kidney transplant last June, so I had stayed overnight with him in the hospital around then, and around a couple years ago in November around his initial diagnosis. So I am familiar what being in the hospital is like and what all to expect like overnight and everything, but I was not, I had never been there myself, and I had never like experienced like getting an IV put in, having all these tests done on myself. So the entire time I was in the emergency room and in the hospital and everything, I was really acutely aware of how my brother must have been feeling when he was getting all these tests done, and how uncomfortable that must have been for him, but it was like necessary. And that's how I felt during this whole process too. I'm like, I can't believe this is happening to me. And like I can't just like turn them away because I need them to fix me. I can't fix myself at this point. So yeah, after my CT scan, they take me back to my exam room. My doctor at this point had come in and he did the test with my foot again, where they straighten your leg and you lay back and they hit you on the bottom of your foot. And at that point I had felt like some uncomfortability to that happening to me. Like it was a little bit more painful than the last time, which the last time that they tried it, it was not painful at all. But at this point it was painful, which I'm sure the nurse probably had told him. So we were seeing some progression in my symptoms at that point. And my doctor basically told me, hey, it could be appendicitis, but we need to like keep you here for 3 hours because that's really when the worst of your symptoms would be presenting. And so we just need you to like wait for a while. So I ended up waiting 3 hours. They came in and they told me, yeah, you have appendicitis. And they told me that I must have a pretty high pain tolerance because typically you feel the pain like almost immediately, and it's a lot more painful than a 6 or a 7 on onset. And so they were telling me, that this was kind of an unusual circumstance for me to be feeling pain as dull as I was, and that usually it's a lot more painful on onset. So yeah, my husband had been there with me the entire time, and at this point they told us that an ambulance would be coming to get me to transfer me, and we weren't worried about that because my husband had gotten coverage prior to this in case anything ever happened to either of us, that an ambulance ride would be covered by our insurance. Anyway, so they told us that an ambulance would be coming to get me to transfer me, and my husband went home to take care of our dogs really quickly and pack up some stuff that I would need at the hospital, like a change of clothes, my toothbrush and toothpaste, stuff like that. So I was alone for a bit waiting for him to come back. I think he was gone probably about an hour, and they told us it would be like probably an hour and a half before the ambulance came to pick me up because they had to travel from wherever they were to the hospital I was at. So I waited for them to get back. Husband got back, waited for the EMTs and the ambulance. They finally got there, and they put me in a gurney, loaded me into the ambulance, and I rode in the ambulance to the other hospital. And I was actually really surprised that I was able to fall asleep on the ambulance ride. The gurney that they had me in, I wasn't like scooted all the way back as I should have been. So they had me like partially leaned, probably at like a 45 or 60 degree angle. And so I was partially reclined, but that amount of recline was causing like probably this much of a gap where my lower back was and the bed. And so it was really uncomfortable, and it was hard to relax when I was in the gurney in the ambulance. It was really bumpy initially, going down all like the the highways and stuff like that to the interstate to get to the main road that would take us to the hospital. And so every single time we would hit a bump, I would like tense up my body, and that would hurt my stomach more. And so eventually I asked the EMT to give me a pillow that was just beside me and put it low enough down behind my back so that I could relax, and that helped a lot, and I was able to sleep some during the ambulance ride. When I got to the hospital that I got transferred to, they put me into the emergency room there, and it was 4 a.m. So I was in a lot of pain. I hadn't been on any pain meds since they had initially put my IV in. When they put my IV in, they put some pain meds in me. It wasn't like a narcotic or anything like that. I can't remember what it was, but it wasn't like a super high dosage of anything, so it kind of just like soothed the pain. But that wore off, and by 4 a.m. I was feeling pain again, and it was enough where I was like really excited to get some pain meds again. So we had to wait maybe like 10 minutes or so to get a room. And eventually we got the room. They took my vitals again, and then they took some blood again. They gave me a new wrist bracelet to get my information, and they also gave me another bracelet after they took my blood. I think it was to tell the other nurses what blood tests they had done, because it just had like a bunch of different barcodes on it, and it was a red bracelet, so it was different from like the initial admittance bracelet that you get when you get checked into a hospital. So yeah, they took my vitals again, they took blood, and then they told me that a doctor, an emergency room doctor, would come see me to come check on my symptoms, to kind of give me an idea of what the surgery would be like, because at this point, the whole reason I got transferred is because they needed to do a surgery to get my appendix removed. So they were gonna give me an idea of what that was gonna be like. My nurse at the previous hospital had told me that they could probably get me in pretty early. So at this point, I was expecting that it was 4 a.m. I was thinking that I would get into the surgery around 6:30, 7 o'clock, something like that, so that I wouldn't need to go to sleep or anything. Like I could just, stay awake until they took me into surgery. So I had that expectation that the surgery would be really early, but nobody was telling me otherwise, that the surgery wasn't going to happen anytime soon, which was extremely frustrating to me because I was like really impatient at that point. I was like, okay, I want to get this over with. I want to get better. I want to stop feeling pain. But it was a long waiting time. So I was in the emergency room probably for maybe 45 minutes to an hour. My husband and I tried to like rest our eyes as much as we can. And it was really hard because it felt like every, 30 minutes or so, somebody was coming in to talk to me or to check on me or whatever. The emergency room doctor came in eventually, and he felt my stomach to like kind of determine how much pain I was feeling and what areas. It was really painful at that point, especially on my left side for some reason. I'm not sure why that was. It was just painful all around though. They came by a little bit later with a wheelchair to wheel me to my room in the hospital. So they were taking me out of the emergency room and taking me to a different part of the hospital to stay overnight. They still didn't tell me at this point when my surgery would be, or how long I would be there or anything like that. So I was still very much like completely blindsided about how long I would be there and when the surgery would be. I got settled in my room, and they told me that a nurse would be by to see me, and that hopefully a doctor would come by too to tell me when my surgery would be, and to kind of get acquainted with my symptoms and stuff like that. So it was probably about 5 a.m. at this point, 5:30, something like that, and I was just like so exhausted, and I kept like kind of complaining to my husband, and I'm like, I really just want them to give me something for the pain, because I was so uncomfortable and it was so painful. However, my husband and I kind of dozed off. They didn't bring him like anything to sleep on. He was just sitting in a chair up against the windowsill, so like sitting backwards in the chair and like resting his head on the windowsill like this. Felt so bad. But like I couldn't get anybody into our room to kind of get him something. Like that was the first thing that the nurse that wheeled me into the room said that he would request, was a chair or a cot or something for him to sleep in, like a recliner or a cot. And so I thought at that point, like, I don't need to request that, like they're trying to take care of it. Yeah, so I hadn't thought about asking them for those things. But anyway, we were waiting for my nurse. We both fell asleep. They came in to take blood from me again. After that, it was like nothing was really happening. My husband and I slept kind of on and off throughout the night, and we woke up and it was like 8 a.m. and my nurse had finally come in to see me. She was like apologizing profusely, but I was like, why did it take you so long to come see me? Like that's what I was thinking in my head, like why I've been in here since like 5 o'clock, 5:30, and you didn't come to give me pain meds, you didn't come check on me, you didn't take my vitals or anything. Like I felt like very neglected at that point, and I was really frustrated, and mostly frustrated because I hadn't been wheeled off into surgery yet, but also very frustrated because I was in so much pain and they weren't giving me pain meds. Anyway, she comes in and she's asking me all these questions. She kept asking me if I take any at-home medicine, which just basically means like, do I take medicine for anything, like if you were taking like high blood pressure medicine that you get like off the shelf at Walmart or something like that, stuff like that, to like self-medicate that's not prescribed to you. Kept telling her no, but she kept asking me the same thing over and over again. I don't know why she kept asking. She asked me a bunch of other questions that I'm pretty sure they asked me at intake already, but she had to ask me again. I don't know why. Did anybody else get really frustrated about that? I feel like every doctor's office I go into, you fill out this big questionnaire when you are a new patient, and it's like they don't even read it, because then they all ask you all those same questions again when you're seeing like a nurse or a doctor for the same time. I don't understand it. We'll never understand it. Just like read the questionnaire you had me fill out. I don't understand. Anyway, so once she finishes asking me all these questions, she tells me I'm gonna have to take a MRSA test because I came from a different hospital, and that I also will have like another IV bag attached to me. All this, she leaves it next to the like little nurse's computer that's in my room. And she never touches it again. Like the whole rest of the time I was in the hospital, that IV bag and the MRSA test were in that same spot. She said some other nurse would give those to me. Never happened. So I don't know what was going on with her that night. She must have had a hard night or something, because she was like, I don't know, asked me the same questions over and over again, and then on top of that, she just like didn't give me the things that she said that they needed to give me. Anyway, so it's probably like 8:30 at this point. I ask her if my surgery is scheduled, and she says no, and they don't know when it will be scheduled. She told me that I would have to see a doctor first before they would schedule it, and they told me that they had to put some fluids in me first. It was all like really vague. Like she told me, hey, we have to wait for this, and so on. So at that point, my husband was like, okay, I should probably go home and check on the dogs, take a nap at home, since we don't know when your surgery is going to be. And at this point, it probably won't be anytime soon. So he leaves. It's Friday morning at this point. We're both extremely tired. He even more so, because he didn't get to sleep on the way to the hospital in an ambulance. He had to drive all the way there. So he goes home, takes care of our chickens, takes care of our dogs, gets a little bit of a nap in, and then he comes back because he had been home for about 1 hour when my nurse had come in. It was a different nurse because they changed shifts at like 8:30 or something like that, 7 o'clock. And my nurse came in, she gave me morphine, and she said, get in this gown, you're going to surgery. And this was like 10:30 at that point, 10:30. So I waited like 2 hours after the nurse told me, like, you have to wait for a doctor, you have to wait for us to give you these IV or whatever, and then you will be able to go into surgery. Skip all that. I never saw a doctor. I didn't have to take those IV things or whatever. I hadn't been on pain meds since 4 a.m. It's 10:30 at this point. And they're like, okay, we're gonna give you morphine, you're gonna put on this gown, we're gonna go to surgery. And I'm like, okay, finally. And I was so excited. I was just so excited, but I had wished they told me when it would be, because then my husband could be there and he could, not have to freak out and worry about me on the way back to the hospital. Like, he would be able to be there if they needed to find him and tell him something about like my condition and the surgery or something like that. Because in my experience, when my brother had his transplant, you're supposed to stay in the like surgery waiting room. And that way, if the doctor needs to tell you what's going on or something like that, they can come find you really easily and tell you what's going on. So my husband was in the car on the way back, and I was in the pre-operation room. So yeah, it was very frustrating. So before I get to the pre-operation room, I am changing into my gown. I got the morphine. Morphine was really weird for me because they gave me like no warning whatsoever about how I would feel. She just put it in my arm, and I was like, oh, I feel really weird. Like, is that normal? And she was like, well, do you feel really warm? And I'm like, no, it feels different. And she was like, oh, well, is it tightness of your chest? And I'm like, yeah, that's what it feels like. And meanwhile, the whole time I'm thinking I'm having a really bad reaction to the morphine or something like that. But really, it's just a normal symptom, and she just didn't tell me about it ahead of time. So that was freaky. So yeah, they wheel me into the pre-operation room. They take my vitals again. The anesthesia doctor comes in and she asks me some questions. And then the surgeon comes in and he talks to me. He asks me if I've seen a doctor. I said no. I guess there was a different doctor that was gonna come talk to me before the surgery, but he didn't get around to doing that. So yeah, my doctor talks to me, tells me what they're gonna do. It was gonna be a laparoscopic surgery, which just means that instead of making like a big incision in my stomach, they were just gonna use a robot, and it was gonna make 3 little punctures through my stomach, 1 for the camera and then 2 for the operating tools, so that they could remove my appendix. So it wouldn't be like a big ugly scar or anything like that, not that I really care. But yeah, so he told me about that, and then he told me, like what to expect. They said that they were going to wheel me in there. I wouldn't have anesthesia until I went in. So they would knock me out with laughing gas, and then after that they would put a tube down my throat so that I could breathe during the surgery. And then before I came out of my anesthesia, they would take the tube out so I wouldn't have to experience any of that consciously. I waited in the pre-operation probably around 2.5 hours before they brought me into the operating room. It was really boring. They didn't let me have my phone. I had to take off all my metal, so I didn't have my wedding ring on. I had to leave that in my hospital room unattended because my husband wasn't there. It was all just a really weird situation. So yeah, I waited 2.5 hours or so to go into the surgery. And then once I was in the surgery, I don't remember much of it. I wasn't conscious for very long in that room. They put a mask over my mouth and they told me to breathe, and I kept doing that. And then at some point, I guess I was no longer conscious because I don't remember anything between having that mask on my face and them taking it off when I was awake. And then it was like really funny. It was like a movie transition. So like the light above me was this really interesting light, and it had like a bunch of bulbs in it. And it was like a really big lamp head. And when I woke up, it was like spinning. It wasn't actually spinning, it was just my vision spinning. And then somebody would come over my head and they would talk to me and they would ask me a question and I would answer, but I don't remember what I answered or what they asked me or anything like that because it was just so blurry and everything was like spinning and it was just like a movie. Like they come in over and you see them talking to you, but you're like, what are you saying? Because you're moving around in the room. And then at some point I remember they were wheeling me off out of the surgery room into the post-operation room. And I wasn't there for long, but it definitely felt long because I was just so loopy from anesthesia. When I was in the post-operation room, they asked me some more questions. They asked me if my husband was there, and I said, I don't know. And a little bit after asking me questions that I don't remember and telling me about how the surgery went and all this, they started wheeling me back to my room. And that felt a lot shorter than the trip to the pre-operation room. I'm sure it's because I was just still on anesthesia and everything. But yeah, it was really sweet because when I got back to my room, my friends were there and my husband was there. My husband was actually on the phone with my dad, and he was telling him how that I was in surgery, and he didn't know when I was gonna come out of surgery, but then he like interrupted himself as he was saying that because he was like, oh, they're wheeling her back like right now, like she's in the room now. So it was nice to be able to give that update to my dad real time. So yeah, I talked to my dad really briefly, and then I was trying really hard not to cry because I was so emotional about the fact that my friends were there. It's kind of like a little bit of a trip to come to the hospital that I was at for them. So I was really emotional about the fact that they were there, and I was trying not to cry because crying would have been really painful. But yeah, so I was out of surgery. I hadn't tried to like move or get up at anything at that point. They never gave me like a catheter, so I was still having to go to the bathroom on my own, like getting up out of bed and going to the bathroom. So yeah, it was just, I knew at some point I would have to get out of the bed and go to the bathroom, and that's like one of the first things that I did once I was back in my hospital room. I was still in my gown, so I had to wait for my nurse to come back so that I wouldn't flash my friends. My nurse came back probably like about 30 minutes after I got back to my room to check on me. She offered to give me morphine, but I opted for Tylenol, which I'm really happy that I did because I didn't know until I was about to leave the hospital, but narcotics and anesthesia both kind of, they paralyze your soft organs, and your soft organs are like your intestines, stuff like that. And so if I had been taking those, it would have been more difficult for me to go to the bathroom, pass gas, stuff like that. And those were all things that are really important to make sure that you can do before you leave the hospital. And in like my brother's case, when we were post his transplant surgery, he wasn't allowed to leave the hospital until he had like at least farted or pooped. So I was really excited that I was already like burping and I was still able to pee, and it was not as hard as I thought it would be. I was really scared to fart because I was afraid that I was feeling a lot of pressure in my stomach. I was definitely really bloated after the surgery. Like my stomach was probably like 3 times as big as it is right now. Before I went into the ER, I was like 133 pounds, and that's not a normal weight for me at all. And when I came out of the hospital and I weighed myself when I got home, I was probably like 134 pounds. And that just tells you how swollen I was. Right now, being home and my surgery was on Friday and it is now Wednesday, I am now 128 pounds, which is way closer to my normal weight. So that tells you how much my swelling has gone down and how, less expanded my stomach is. And that is mostly the reason why now I'm like so much more comfortable doing things that I would normally be doing. Like I was able to make my bed today. I was able to sleep on my side last night. I'm able to like bend over from the waist, which on the first couple days after my surgery I wasn't really able to do. But yeah, let me not get too ahead of myself. After I'm out of surgery, my friends were there, got to talk to them. It was really nice. Noah gave them our house keys so that they could go take care of our dogs and like let them out to go to the bathroom and feed them so that Noah could stay overnight in the hospital with me. At this point, I was really expecting to go home at any point in time. My surgery doctor said that if I was doing really well, that I would be able to go home the same day as the surgery. But my doctor never came to see me, and my nurse basically said my doctor has to come see me to discharge me before I can actually go home. So we ended up having to stay another night there. I slept a lot better that night, but they did come in and poke me a lot. So they came in and they took blood from me, but they took blood from my opposite arm and not my IV arm, which was really irritating because it was not fun at all. They also gave me a blood thinner, but the way that they gave me the blood thinner wasn't like a pill or anything like that, which is how they gave it to my brother when he was first diagnosed with his kidney failure, and like they had to do some they gave him blood thinners because normally people with kidney failure are like elderly people and they need blood thinners to make sure that their organs are working properly. Anyway, so they gave me a blood thinner, and then the way that they did it was they made me lift up my shirt where my surgery incisions were, and they shot my stomach, which was like the most painful thing that I have ever felt in my life. I don't know how people with like diabetes get shots in their stomach or stuff like that. Like that is so uncomfortable. I feel so bad for people who have to do that every single day. I did not like that at all. It felt like a really, really intense bee sting that didn't go away for like 30 minutes. So yeah, they gave me the blood thinners. They took my blood while I was sleeping. They also came in and took my vitals while I was sleeping. They came in and they gave me antibiotics through my IV. I got woken up several times that night because my IV bag, the one with the antibiotics in it, it was probably like, it was a smaller IV bag. It wasn't like one of those full ones that they fill with fluid just to keep you hydrated. And every single time it would empty, it would just like beep and beep and beep and beep and beep, and it would wake my husband and I up. And the call button on my bed, I guess there wasn't like a lot of staff that was active and able to help that night, because whenever I would hit my call button, it would like nobody would answer the call. And my husband would have to get up out of bed and go find my nurse or another nurse that was available to kind of come turn off the beeping sound so that we could try to get some sleep. It was not fun. Anyway, so we sleep through the night. We wake up in the morning. My nurse comes by. My daytime nurse was different from my nighttime nurse, but my daytime nurse was always the same, which was nice because she knew me and she was familiar with what was going on, and she was very nice. She told me that she still didn't know when I would be discharged, but if my doctor didn't come by that day, she would be able to discharge me. At this point, I had 2 meals. Both of them were liquid diet meals. They didn't know how I would process the anesthesia. Some people get nauseous after anesthesia, or they can't use the bathroom or whatever, so they were worried about that, so they were giving me a full liquid diet. Both times that I got a meal, I didn't get to order it myself, which was weird because my nurse would come in and tell me, like I would ask her because I was hungry if I was able to order my meal yet, and she would tell me like, yeah, go ahead. And then each time they like had already ordered for me, which I wish that they didn't, because each time I got one of these meals, it was just the most random assortment of foods. So the first meal that I got after my surgery was my dinner, and it was tomato soup, ice cream, vanilla yogurt, milk, and grape juice, if I'm remembering correctly. And then my breakfast the following day was cream of wheat, which if you haven't had cream of wheat is like the most bland breakfast ever. I kind of wish they gave me like oatmeal or something. Or anything else really. Like I would have settled for tomato soup again. That would have been fine with me, but cream of wheat was not very good. They were supposed to bring me coffee, but they didn't bring me coffee, but I had like a little cup with packets of sugar and a little thing of creamer. So I know that they were supposed to bring me coffee. It just didn't show up for some reason. I don't know if I would have drank it anyway. I'm not really a huge coffee drinker. And then they brought orange juice, and there was yogurt again, and then there was a Italian ice, which I thought was weird to serve with breakfast. That was just really strange. Oh, and the other thing was both meals they brought me vanilla pudding. So like a lot of vanilla things, which was weird. Anyway, so my husband stayed overnight with me. I had breakfast. And then I was waiting for the doctor to show up or for my nurse to tell me I could go home. My nurse at one point came in and told me that I would have to finish an IV bag and another round of antibiotics before I could go home. But before she came in to give me those, the doctor that was supposed to see me before the surgery came in finally, and he was talking to me about how I was doing. I told him that I really wanted to be not on a liquid diet anymore. Like I wanted to order my lunch and I wanted to have a regular diet meal, like solid foods. And he said that was fine. He got it approved for me. And then like 5 minutes later in our conversation, he discharged me. So it was really, really awesome. I was like, okay, well, I'm not even gonna order food from the hospital. I'll just like get something on the way home. So I get discharged. And then we have to wait for my nurse to come in and give me my paperwork with like my discharge information, follow-up care, stuff like that, and remove my IV from my arm. So we wait around for her to come back. My husband takes a couple trips to the car because for some reason he didn't put any of our stuff in a bag when he left the house. He just like ran back and forth from the car, like carting things in his arms, which I get that he was probably stressed out, but I just don't understand why he didn't get a bag. So yeah, he takes several trips to get our stuff back into the car. Shortly after he takes his last trip to the car, my nurse comes in and she takes out my IV. Surprisingly, the most uncomfortable part of that was not like taking the tube out of my arm. It was actually removing the tape. That was the most painful, which was really surprising. And then after that, we went over the paperwork and then we got to leave, which was really nice. At this point, I had taken like several laps around the floor that I was on that morning so that my nurse kept telling me I needed to make sure I could walk around. I didn't have any issues with that. I wasn't a fall risk or anything like that. So I was doing my best to try to get some like activity in and not be on bed rest all day. So I walked around. At this point, I was so swollen that walking was pretty painful. Like it was just uncomfortable is I guess what I'm trying to say. I had to like hold my stomach the whole time, and I had to like lean forward when I walked instead of standing up straight because of how swollen I was. Because when I would stand up straight, it would like stretch the skin on my stomach and it would hurt my incisions. So I had to like kind of walk slumped over. So our walk back to our car to go home was just like a really, really, really slow one. It's very uncommon for me to walk that slow. I'm like a speed walker. When I was little and I would go to the store with my mom and everything like that, My mom was a really like fast speed walker, so I would have to keep up with her. So that has just translated into me being a speed walker. And sometimes Noah, my husband, yells at me, or not yells at me, but he's like, "Why are you walking so fast? Why don't you want to walk next to me?" And it's just because I want to walk fast, I guess. But so it was like weird for me to have to walk that slow. Anyway, we get into the car. My husband had to lift, kind of like help me get into the car, but this was the first time that I had to do it. And having the incisions on my stomach, it went through my abdominal wall. So like I had no strength down there at all and doing anything at all, like from sitting up in bed to pulling a plug out of the wall, stuff like that. It was all very strenuous on my stomach. And so getting in the car for the first time was extremely difficult. I should have had Noah kind of like help me lift myself into the car, because lifting myself into the car, it caused a lot of pain for me, and I was out of breath for probably about 10 minutes after that, because I was like in shock about how painful it was to do that. Getting out of the car was much easier. Definitely a learning curve, getting used to how painful everything would be and how I would have to move my body so that I wouldn't hurt myself, and do different things to make sure that the way that I was moving was supportive and stuff like that. I know that for the past couple days I've been relying on my arms to like lift myself out of a seated position or a laying down position. When I get out of bed in the morning, I kind of like roll all the way over so that I can lift myself up by my forearms, instead of normally you lift yourself up with your abs and when you sit up, but I can't do that at all. So yeah, it's definitely been a learning curve. Anyway, I've been home for, let's see, I went home on Saturday. I got discharged on Saturday. So I've been home Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and now it's Wednesday. So I've been home 5 days, not 5 full days, but 4 full days. And I have to go see my primary care physician on tomorrow. And then I go see my surgeon on Tuesday. So the day that you guys are seeing this video. And that's just to make sure that I'm healing correctly and everything's going well and everything like that. But yeah, I'm just so happy that the surgery is over and I'm on the upside of the whole thing. The first couple days after surgery were really difficult. Eating was really difficult because I would try to eat like the same amount of food that I normally would, but it would bloat me and then I would be really uncomfortable. So I'm very happy that all of that is over and I'm starting to feel normal again. It's starting to feel a lot better to just live in general. Yesterday was the first day that I was able to get out of bed without like any difficulty, which is awesome. That shows a lot of improvement. And yesterday I was also on my feet a lot more than I have been the past couple days. I was able to do the dishes and help my husband pickle some cucumbers and beets from our garden. We're on trying to catch up to all the vegetables and fruits that are growing in our garden. We have so many cucumbers, it's hard to keep up with. Luckily we have friends from church that they set up a meal train, so we haven't had to worry about making meals, and we won't have to worry about making meals until Saturday unless they kind of like renew the meal train. So we've had people bringing us dinner and then we eat the leftovers for dinner, and it's been really great. It's nice to have like one less responsibility to worry about. And I know it takes a whole load off of my husband having to worry about preparing meals for us every day too. But yeah, I'm really excited that all of that is over with and it's behind me and I'm on the mend, and I'm hoping that I get better even faster. Like I'm excited to be getting back in like my more normal routine and be able to film videos for you guys. I knew that it probably wouldn't have been possible to put out a video last week based on just how I was feeling coming right out of surgery and not being able to like sit upright in my chair and edit a video for a couple hours. And I know that you guys are really supportive and don't really mind if I miss an upload. I think the biggest thing is I'm just really hard on myself when I miss an upload because of how the YouTube algorithm kind of punishes you for missing a upload. So anyway, I'm really excited to put out new content for you guys. I'm working on some pattern review videos, and I also am working on a few projects that are not amigurumi, this being one of them, and I'm working on like some clothing items for myself because I'm going on vacation in a couple weeks, so I wanted to have some new like comfy clothes for that. And yeah, so excited to show you guys that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and comment down below if you've ever gone through like a appendicitis or have had a appendectomy before. I know it's like a really difficult situation, but it's like very, very common among people to have appendicitis and have to have this kind of surgery. Anyway, if you guys enjoy my content and you want to see more in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the bell if you want to be notified every single time I upload videos every Tuesday, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!